Yes, hello, and welcome to Note Investing Made Easier. I am your host, Martin Sines, and I want to just first thank you for taking time out of your day to come and spend with myself and a very special guest that I'm going to announce in just a moment. And I just want to tell you that it's very humbling just seeing, all the folks that are in the group and are just kind of mixing it up. And hey, Monica, how are you? By the way, my new assistant is going to call you shortly, so we need to get some password help. So we're ready to roll with some NCCI reports. We do love you guys. You guys are great door knockers and collection agency and all the above. Anyway, back to what we're talking about here. I want to just make one announcement. I have a note investing fundamentals workshop taking place on September 27th and 28th in Washington, D.C. So you can register, go to the events page on the group page, or just go to noteinvestingmadeeasier.com and register that way. Well, without further ado, I have to interview. I'd love to introduce my guest here, Joel Markovitz of Talent Capital Partners. Joel, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Martin. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing well on a beautiful Friday. I'm sure it's beautiful in lovely California.
It is. It actually it's nice and temperate. It's only about 78 degrees right now.
Oh wow. Yeah, that is pretty good weather for you guys. So you get a little break from the heat. So I guess let's start with something important. You and I always just love talking to you. You're just such good energy, and you have such peace about you. And we were just talking before about Juvenile Diabetes Foundation that you're a part of, and so that's something special to you. And you just want to, just for 1 minute, tell us what that's about.
Sure, not a problem. About 5 years ago, my daughter was diagnosed, unbeknownst to us, with type 1 diabetes. She basically was rushed to the hospital with a blood sugar level of 838. That basically you're just short of a coma. It was a shock to the system, literally and figuratively. So it was kind of a baptism by fire for our family, but we've come out the other end and we've become very involved with JDRF, which are a local chapter here in Orange County. My daughter changed her career, and she's a health and wellness coach specific to type 1 and type 2 diabetes. She's written a book. She speaks, she writes for a variety of different publications. And in today's world, it's one little way for us to be involved and kind of give back to something that we have a real knowledge base. So my wife, myself, my son, we participate in a variety of different events, specifically to the walk that takes place every first weekend of November at Anaheim Stadium, and obviously support my daughter and her endeavors. And she does a lot of obviously client-based work, but she also does, she works with some people as an advocate, especially this time of year when kids are starting back at school with 504 plans and things of that nature. So we're kind of pretty much involved very heavily into that world.
Terrific. Well, I guess I know you have your hands in a few different pots. So I guess this distressed note industry is on autopilot for you at this point.
I think that's a misnomer. Anybody who thinks they know everything doesn't know anything. Kind of when I first got into, I've always been in distressed debt going back to kind of college. I worked for a law firm, which some people may remember or not. It was a nationwide collection firm called Haight and Landau. And then I went to work for General American Credits in college because, frankly, I could make $200 a week, and that was a lot of money for a student in those days. When I graduated college, I had a degree in journalism, and I was offered a job with the National Notary Association, and I was going to have to take a pay cut of 25%. And I was like, that just didn't make sense. So I've kind of always stayed in the debt space. Worked for Navistar, which I did floor planning and regional collections. Eventually into the mortgage space. And going back when the world changed in 2009, I was working for a company by the name of Mortgage Outreach Services, which eventually became NewView. And we did outreach on behalf of Citi and NationStar and Genworth and PMI and at the time Saxon Mortgage. We were getting anywhere between 24 and 40,000 files a month.
Wow.
My job, and this is kind of where my background kind of comes full circle, is initially I did quality control. And so my job was just to make sure that we were in compliance. We had SLAs with the clients, we had regulations. This was even before CFPB. So my job was to make sure that we were following all the laws and that we were making sure that we were serving our clients in the best manner possible. We listened to phone calls, we reviewed reports. We had to provide reporting to the government in those days because each of those institutions were taking funds. And then eventually I ran operations, so that kind of brought my experience full circle. And then at one point in time, we had a hedge fund come to us and said, look, we have these notes, we'd like you to collect on them. So we started diving a little bit deeper. So what do you mean by notes? Like we all understood the concept, but the concept of an individual owning them was kind of was new and unique. And that was in 2009 and 10. Once we kind of learned that, we said, well, geez, I mean, I don't have to go through an RFP with SunTrust Bank and get the project kicked to the curb because somebody left. These investors care about one thing: how quickly can they turn that investment back into cash? Like, well, this seems a lot easier, and that's kind of how we evolved. And we were acquired by Land Home at the time, and so I started traveling the country, going to different events, speaking at different places. That's where you and I met, I think, at the Tang event, and different Eddie Speeds events and things of that nature, and understanding kind of the note space. And it was my background. I didn't start at the front side. I kind of worked my way from the back to the front. I think that's kind of served me in having a full circle understanding of what takes place.
So you've worked with, like you said, 40, 50,000 files at a time. You've worked in that large enterprise, a large collections, department, loss mitigation department. And you've also worked with, one-offs with small note investors. So what's your sweet spot? Like what have you enjoyed the most that has given you the most peace of mind?
I really like working with the newer investor, where they come and they have questions and they don't know, and what do I say and how do I mean, look, we understand, volume pays the bills, but if you're talking about satisfaction, sometimes there's two different things. And working with investors who have 5 notes, 10 notes, 20 notes, what do I do? How do I do it? I do a lot of collateral review for people who, okay, I have a mortgage, I have a note, maybe they're missing an assignment or a lodge, or there's a lien on there and they need something, how do we interpret it? So working working hands-on, rolling up your sleeves and getting on the phone with somebody is much more gratifying and appealing. To me personally, I like I like speaking with people. I like working with them, as opposed email isn't necessary, and I understand the efficiencies of it. And maybe I'm old school because I still get a newspaper every day.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of gets me going, and you learn about people and what's in their lives and things of that nature. So it's not a dispassionate interaction.
Yeah, got it. I'm a phone person too. I like, I yesterday you and I talked, on an opportunity, and I talked to Val the day before, and I love talking. I feel like that's when I learn the most, is when I'm having exchanges with other people in the industry, and it just keeps me sharp.
No, I think it's very true, because your experiences are different than mine. It could be impacted by the type of assets that you look at. It can be impacted by where you're located. It can just be impacted by your experience. And We all come from a unique perspective, where sometimes we all agree, sometimes we don't agree, but there's nothing wrong with having a healthy discourse and finding ways in which to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And even besides just dialogue, I mean, it seems like every other time I talk to you, you have an opportunity coming up, or you have something in hand that I can look at. So I mean, it's advantageous for the community to be talking to each other, especially people that may have opportunities for you, such as yourself.
No, of course. And I kind of look at it, and I've used this analogy when I've spoken with the groups before. It's the Annie Hall analogy. In Annie Hall, Woody Allen and Diane Keaton are walking down the street, and he starts telling her about sharks, and for a shark to survive, he has to constantly be moving, and he can't stop. If not, he dies. And he turns to her about the relationship, and he says, "What we have here is a dead shark. I don't want to be a dead shark."
Yeah. So you want to stay relevant in the industry, and so speaking of which, I mean, where do you see the industry as it stands today?
Well, I think it's kind of unique. I think that there's opportunity. I go back to 2011 and 2012, and people were asking, "Well, how long will the notes last?" And people were forecasting, 2016, 2017 max. And obviously, we're in 2019, and there are still opportunities out there. And there's rumblings that there's going to be another shift in the economy, and people are feeling like optimistic that there's going to be more portfolio coming into the marketplace. I think that there's kind of a constant, and you'll see, like, for lack of a better term, if you have like a bell curve, and so you start to see it rising, and I believe that economic prosperity or challenges kind of correlate directly with them. So we've had over the summer, it seems like there's been a little bit less portfolio available. Now I'm starting to see more and more portfolio come available. Maybe the portfolio took a summer break, just like everybody did with their kids, and now it's coming back. But I think there's still opportunities. I think there's going to be more opportunities, and there's unique opportunities. I speak with people on a daily basis, and they're making strides. Construction loans or personal guarantee loans, or things that, just because it's not specific to the traditional first mortgage non-performing, second mortgage non-performing, there's always different offshoots. And I think you have to that's about the evolution of you as in your business. I think you create a foundation. You find a few things that work. I know that you're partial to second non-performing seconds. And I'm agnostic when people ask me what type of assets do you like. I'm agnostic. It's all about the deal. It's whether it's a first or a second, performing, non-performing. There are opportunities with REOs. There are opportunities with contract for deeds. I used to be very hands-off on contract for deeds, and I've spent a lot of time, probably over the last year and a half, looking at them. And I think there are opportunities. Look, some are dogs, but there are dogs in every asset class.
Yeah, and I think you have that seasoning about you where you can switch gears into other asset classes within the note space. You remind me of Deepta Higher Math, because
That's a compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, no, oh yeah, no doubt. I think the world of her. I mean, she I don't know if she's wrapped up on it, but she's in a very large real estate development project. And every time I talk to her, she's doing something completely different, but yet she could go pull up her sleeves and run due diligence on a large junior lien pool in a second. So it's, to me, I just kind of I just stay in the lane and for now, and that's works for me.
Well, but she has a tremendous, when you speak with her, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge, and there's tremendous amount of confidence and logic. Her mind works in a very unique, logical way that obviously benefits her greatly. So I think one of the challenges as investors or in the note space, it's about confidence. Confidence in what you know, confidence in what you don't know. Sometimes it's about taking a leap of faith, and sometimes you don't want to take a leap of faith, and sometimes that's the right move. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. There is just the answer, or what you decide to move forward with. And I look at it in that regard, that opportunities present themselves, and you have to evaluate what you're comfortable with. Personally, like, some came across my desk the other day, and it was a project in 144 apartments that needed complete rehab in the South. And but it was like going for like crazy, like $700,000, but you had to put in probably another $7,000 a door. That's not my comfort zone. I couldn't put my hands on it. I couldn't feel to touch it unless there was somebody else involved in the transaction. That wouldn't be something that I would think I would be comfortable with. But if it's in Arizona or California or something like that, maybe that would give me a bit more comfort. But the whole rehab thing, that's a whole different kettle of fish.
Sure. So, keeping on the note theme, what's been the hardest experience you've gone through in the note space?
Challenges, I think the biggest challenge is dealing with people, and sometimes you try and get answers and you can't get answers, and therefore, and it's through no fault of anybody, but you can't get answers, and you have to make kind of like a game time decision, and you don't have all the facts in front of you. I think those are the things that give me the greatest concern and moment for pause.
In what?
And just not having all the information in front of you to make an educated decision.
So with that said, tell us about Talon Capital Partners. So what services do you provide? That'll probably help give people perspective on why you're saying what you're saying.
Well, we do a lot of collateral review for clients, especially people who are relatively new into the space, or sometimes it's really about how many hours a week do you have to devote to your business? And sometimes it's about time management. Let's say you're an investor, or you have a small fund, and you have X amount of hours to devote to whatever you're trying to engage in. So is your time best spent raising capital? Is it best spent reviewing assets? Or is it best spent picking up the phone and calling borrowers, or reviewing the collateral files? To me, it's about time management. That's a real time management piece. And how do you manage your time best? And where to you as an individual, where is your greatest lift that you can provide to your business? So being a vendor, utilizing a group of vendors. But we do a lot of collateral review and working with people. We'll go through assets. We'll look at them. We'll come back with. We don't make determinations. Yes, you should buy this, or no, you shouldn't, because I'm not sitting inside on the other side of the desk. But we do come back and say, look, all of these items are here. This would lead us to believe that everything is clean, or you're missing something, that this is a fatal error, this is something that can be easily corrected. You should ask about this. And then come back, and we kind of have a give and take, a conversation afterwards, and kind of review it. The report is fine, but again, to our point earlier, or your conversation earlier, the conversation sometimes gives you a little bit more insight. And sometimes there's okay, well, this makes sense. Yes, I should. Okay, I understand why this would work, or why this wouldn't work.
And like you're saying, with collateral review is so critical. So, you can go and kind of rely on the big boys, Orion or Richmond Monroe, to do it. They may take some time, but you would give more of a customized approach. I assume they can talk to you about things. You can have that you instead of getting an exception report, right? That's kind of you're trying to understand what that means, and it's you'll have that dialogue and you'll help them understand things.
It's kind of like a roll up your sleeves engagement. I mean, we'll get on, we'll have a conversation. I've had clients who've come back to me a couple weeks later and said, "Hey, by the way, I got this. We did this. Does this still work?" And of course, look, we have that conversation, and they either fund the deal or they move on to the next one. And sometimes we all learn something. I've had collateral files where entities are spelled 3 different ways in the chain of assignments. How does that really affect you? Yesterday, someone was asking me about a lost note affidavit and how that would affect if they had to foreclose. So we walk through those type of things. There's nothing wrong with a lost note. It happens, but it depends on the state. If you're in New York with a lost note, that's probably going to be a critical error, and you want to move on. If you're in a non-judicial state, then it's going to be more accommodating.
Yeah. Even like any of the allonges or assignments you'll have issues with in New York. That's a real tricky state for that.
Right. So we spend a lot of time doing that, and we did buy some portfolio, and we do a lot of representation, meaning we have, over the years, we've established different relationships with different individuals or funds, and we'll bring some assets to market on their behalf and function in a broker direct manner.
So you can have people reach out to you and say, "Hey, look, Joel, these are my parameters. Can you let me know if anything comes up?"
Sure. Like right now, we have a mixed portfolio of contract for deeds, performing, non-performing, a seconds portfolio. We have a 77 loans from a fund that they're all first mortgages. So we have a few different things that people come to us, and sometimes someone will come to us with 2 or 3 loans and say, "Hey, could you sell this on my behalf?" Because they're a small investor and they don't necessarily have the ability to go into the marketplace. There's no such thing as too small, and frankly, there are things that are too big, but there's no such thing as too small. Yeah. I've represented people for 1 loan. It's about the give and take in the relationship.
Where do you see Talon Capital going? Do you see yourself growing into a staff of people, growing the level of activity you're transacting with, or do you just like the pace that you're at?
Well, I think the pace that we're at, I think, is very comfortable. I think that what we would like to do is kind of have a handful, nothing more. When you get, at Newview, we had 240 people just in Irvine. That was even counting Glen Allen, Virginia. And that was frankly unwieldy. It was uncomfortable. You had people who, you had employees coming in and out. Never want to do that again. So it's about being nimble and being able to operate in an entrepreneurial manner.
Yeah, so you feel like you have more freedom with where you're at than you did before. Sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, the same thing with how you conduct your business. I mean, we're both, I'm in my office out of my home. You look like you're in your office out of your home. I've worked in offices where we've rented spaces and probably will rent again. But there's something about the element of that entrepreneurial spirit. And that's truly where we're at.
Yeah. No, my business model is pretty simple, Joel. It's I sell books and people reach out to me. Some people take the workshop, and then from there, some people get mentored, and through the people that I mentor, they double as colleagues, and we go out and we source deal flow, and we vet that deal flow together, and we take down the deal flow together. That's my business model. And I'm very comfortable doing it. And I don't need a staff of 100 people to do it.
No, no. The managing people is not, in my opinion, managing people is not a fun piece of your day. Yeah. I have enough trouble managing myself, let alone other people.
I knew you were going there.
Or should I say my wife manages me better than I manage myself?
Oh goodness. So what would you say? Well, if you were asked, so I'm going to ask you. I'm just going to ask you what's the number one reason why people that come into the space end up leaving and not being successful at it?
I don't know that I have any empirical data, but these are just inferences. I think sometimes they don't find access to product or the type of product that they're envisioning. I think sometimes it's not understanding and getting enough knowledge of what the important pieces are. You can learn, case in point, probably 6 years ago when I was at Newview, there was an investor and he bought 3 properties in his IRA. And we kept sending him saying, you need to record these assignments. You need to record these assignments. And for like a year, finally, he went to record the assignment and the assignment was written incorrectly. He had to go all the way back. By the time he got the assignment corrected and then recorded, and he wasn't monitoring his taxes, it went to tax sale because he didn't know.
Yeah.
So little things like that could sour you. Sometimes, look, there are you make a bad decision on an asset, but I think I think people get out of the space because of lack of resources to product, lack of resources to knowledge. And then sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And sometimes people's personalities are, they stay within themselves, and we all have moments of panic, and sometimes you don't make good decisions. There's nobody, you, me, we've all had those moments where we've made,
Yeah, no doubt.
Why did I think that was a good decision? But the key is, once you make those, is figuring out how do you fix it. And to me, that's the key.
Matt Kelly, has a really good saying. He says, most people don't lack resources; they lack resourcefulness. And I think that's
a very profound statement. No, I don't. I think he's spot on.
Yeah. And so what would you say the number one attribute is of the node investor that is successful, that makes it in this space?
Well, it's interesting because and I haven't done as much speaking as I used to do, but I would stand in front of a crowd and I would ask how many people have an engineering background. And 40 to 50% of the people in the room have some form of an engineering background. And those people understood that there's no round, everything's a square, it's a corner. Those people have that knowledge that everything, not everything, but they quantify everything. And I think that's a really good foundation. My background, obviously, I'm not in engineering, so I kind of look at it differently. And I've had to learn to kind of look at things like that. As opposed to trusting your gut. Every once in a while, you got to trust your gut. I mean, there's been times where we've made the right, very good call because of a gut decision. But I think from a quality perspective, I think having some form of an engineering background, a math background, those people seem to have a kind of a leg up on the learning curve. It's not a very slow curve. They kind of create the arc and get there quicker. And then I think it's networking. I think networking is really important. No man's an island, no lady's an island. I think it's about networking and getting involved in groups like yours. You network, you find like-minded people, and it becomes a cumulative effect. I've had people ask me, why don't you just go out on your own? And I like working with people. That works for me. Just, it gives me comfort. That's just kind of where my head is at.
And what would you say, what would you suggest to a newer investor in terms of where they start with networking? How do they start to find the people that they should be talking to?
Well, I think personally, I'm not a gigantic fan of the internet for a variety of reasons, which we can all surmise. But I think the internet gives you chat rooms. I think are really good in certain places. I think conferences are very good. A meeting like meetups are very good. I know you have your event coming up. I know in the north in New Jersey, Dave Putz has kind of a group that he works, and I think people network well. Obviously, Eddie Speed does his Note Expo, which has turned into frankly, the premier event in the note space.
I loved it. I was there last year, and he gives me a link to give a early bird special to my group, and I went there, and I didn't know what to expect, and I thought it was very classy. He saved the sales talk to the end for training, and quality hotel. I was very well treated. Really good vendors there, and I found some really good folks to talk to that I was able to connect well with. So all around, I was very happy with the expo, and I'm definitely going to be back this year.
Yeah, no, so I think events like that, I know personally, I like Paper Source. I think Bill Mancaro does a really nice job in April in Las Vegas. So those type of events, I think you network, and then you'll create some relationships, and then you kind of go back and forth. And cell phone today has kind of bridged the gap where you can pick up the phone and, not with my kids because they text everybody, but me, I like to pick up the phone. But texting has its place, but you lose something when to me, it's about the interpersonal communication and the knowledge that you can pick up. And sometimes you just find somebody that you have a like-mindedness, and all of a sudden you have a friend.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it, those are the things. Events, meetups, getting involved in mentorship groups like yourself that you host. I think those are important.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so what would you say, your favorite conference is Note Expo. It's what about IMN? I know that I was really impressed with at Dana Point.
I've been to every IMN for the last 4 years. I didn't go to Florida this year because it's a day and a half, and it's a long trip from here. I think IMN has real value. I think, frankly, the California one probably has a little bit better attendance.
It does.
Right after Christmas and things of that nature. IMN, there's really knowledgeable people there, and you have hedge funds, and you have people from banks and things of that nature. And I think there's the sessions have really good knowledge. I think they're unique sessions, and I think there's real value in them. If you're new to the space, I think you get swallowed up because there's a lot of higher level type dealings that go on, and it's not inexpensive. Once you kind of create your business and you've been around, you've been to Note Expo, and I think those, then I think IMN's a natural progression.
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily. To some people, it could be like a baptism by fire, and by the end of your head's going back and forth. Before you know it, you're swimming. So it all depends on how you can absorb knowledge and how sophisticated your business has gotten.
Yeah, and going back to collateral review, I just can't get out of my head because I just remember all the mistakes I made when I first started. And for many of them I got lucky. I got lucky missing the longes, but it never got called out. I got the loan mod. And then, I didn't even know that an allonge could be a stamp on the note, and I didn't know these things. And I would just, so I was doing what I thought was good due diligence at the time, and just without a collateral review process that was thorough. And so I wish that I had known of someone like you that at the time you were doing something different. You were with Landhome, but still, that's so critical. I think there's a lot of note investors that still buy notes without doing thorough collateral review. Would you say that?
Sure. Look, you don't know what you don't know. And that I think is part of the evolution of an investor or a note or someone in the note space is the more you see it, the more you do it, the more you talk to somebody, the more knowledge you'll acquire. Collateral, I agree with you. Look, when we first were taking in loans we were at Newview and Landhome, we would ask for the note, the mortgage, and the assignments that showed you owned it, not the complete chain. And digressing back to January 10th of 2014, when CFPB really came into being. Prior to that, in the second space, it was like, you may get collateral. You may get the collateral file in 6 months to a year. Because of those regulations that it changed it and it put things in place, and it also forced people in the space to have a much better understanding of what needs to take place post acquisition.
Yeah.
And that's where the collateral has become a more significant piece of having, ownership. Before it was, okay, I got my assignment, I got a copy of the note and the mortgage. That's really changed. The post 2014 really has changed, and that's kind of where the collateral is a critical piece in today's world. And look, everything's it's going to continue to evolve. It's just like anything else, good or bad. I think, if you're asking crystal ballish, I think eventually you're going to have states that you're going to have a national licensure eventually, meaning if you want to buy debt, you're going to have a national license. So now certain states require you to have licenses, or maybe you can acquire it, but if you have more than these numbers, then you do need to get the license. Things are state specific. When I first was looking at loans, you can buy Michigan for 19 cents. I tell this story all the time. I had someone come, he had 1,200 loans in Michigan, and we wanted 19 cents for it. And I said, it's way too expensive. Florida was was 28, 29 cents.
Yeah.
So things change, and you just have to change with it. And in the space, I think we're going to see changes along those lines also. And I think you're seeing a settling of pricing. I see some people who want 100 par for UPB on assets, and I'm like, good luck with that. Why would anybody buy that? What's the upside? Well, you can buy the total accrued debt, but yeah, what happens? That's not that's an if and a come and a maybe. Now, I have seen people who are very successful. They sold the loan, in case in point, a second mortgage for par, and the gentleman who bought the loan collected the total accrued debt of $140,000. He had bought it for 100. He made 40 grand in like 60 days. So I get it, but those opportunities are not sitting right in front of you, and frankly, they're riskier.
That's gambling. That's gambling right there.
Well, but in all fairness, we're buying discounted mortgages. These aren't pristine, Class A, beautiful, nice, wrapped up in a bow. We're buying for a discount. There's a reason that we get them for a discount. I mean, but you're right. That is way risky. That takes risk to a whole new level. But there are risks.
Yeah, but I put a post on my group page just like a week or two ago and it was regarding that same subject, selling discounted debt at par, and really what's unfortunate, it's not a sustainable business model for a seller, for one, because the people that will pay that will not be around long, and it's just not. I don't. I think it forces the hand of the buyer to not be accommodating with the bar in terms of the workout, because there's no leverage, right?
Yeah, you can't create value to the borrower if you're paying par, and this is where you have to make your money. You have less flexibility. Maybe that's a better word to work with the borrower. And frankly, when I've been on the phone with borrowers, I mean, most of the time, borrowers, when you get them on the phone, they are not jerks. I don't know. So I'm trying to find the right word. But these are people who hit a rough patch. These are people who had challenges in their lives, or family members, or health issues, or job losses, or things of that nature. For the most part, I like to be optimistic that we're dealing with people who can be welcoming of assistance. There was a gentleman who came into the space years ago, and his motto was, I want to buy 1,000 loans and modify 1,000 homes. And at the time, I thought, God, that is so the win-win for everybody, and this and that. We all try and do that, and sometimes you accomplish it, and sometimes you just don't, and someone just doesn't have the capacity. There was a property we had in Maryland, and the husband, the husband was disabled, and the wife was on like Social Security. They had a $200,000 house, and there's no way that they could make that $1,200 a month mortgage payment. They couldn't even make a $700 a month payment, and it broke your heart. But what are you supposed to do? You're an investor. You try and find a dignified exit for that. Eventually, we found an apartment that would work for them through somebody that we knew, and they moved out, and we got a deed in lieu, and we took the property back, and everything kind of worked out. But it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, and you did it in a humane way. I mean, that's kind of bottom line.
Having a conversation with another party is, I tell my son, who just graduated college, and I've been telling him for years, I said, you can have an unpleasant conversation in a pleasant manner. Not everything has to be adversarial. And I think you try and do those things and when you work out with them. Now, granted, if you if you farm out your, whoever does the workouts for you, you don't really have any control over that, but you do have control over decisions and things of that nature, and the back and forth, and trying to find an equitable resolution for both your interests and the borrower's interests.
Yeah. We have a question from Marco. He says, with your visibility of mid and smaller size funds, do you see more groups exiting the space over the next 12 to 24 months? Numbers remaining the same or expansion?
I believe, again, my crystal ball is in the closet. But I think that you are going to see, as far as portfolio, I think you're going to see more portfolio coming into the market. I think that you're going to, I think he said visibility of mid and small size funds. I think that's really where the growth has been at. And I think there are going to be certain people who are going to, the note space people will move onto other things that they find multifamily might be appealing to them, or they look into turnkey rentals. People find, well, this really appeals to me. So I think you're always going to see people coming in and out of the space. But I do think that there's opportunity, more and more opportunity that's going to come over the next 24 to 36 months. I think presently right now, I think there's kind of been a stabilizing of foreclosures. nationwide.
Mhm.
But I think that you're going to start to see some effects of some of the things that are going on in the economy that will affect that. And I think you'll see some more product coming into the marketplace. And then there's more opportunity. There's more opportunity for you to be successful and frankly, to help out a borrower, get them back on the right path. So I'm optimistic of the opportunity. I don't think it's going to go the other direction where we're going to, everybody's going to be bidding up a contract for deed in Michigan to 90 cents. I don't see that coming.
Yeah, I would just add to that, a few mid-level players that I have in mind have left the space temporarily just to pursue, rehabs and other ventures. And, with the anticipation they'll come back in when prices decrease. I think for those individuals, it's going to be challenging to come back in and just kind of start where you left off. There's going to be some rebooting and things are going to be a little different when they come back around. And I know there's been more folks, and I think there's some law firms that promote getting your fund as the way to brand yourself and elevate your game and attract the deal flow, attract the capital. And I think some of those will fizzle out because you should never be leading with the fund's not going to drive the activity. The fund's just the vehicle. You have to drive the activity through, like what you said, Joel, just nonstop, relentless, dialogue with other note investors, with the other people in the community on a daily basis, just spending that time getting to know your peers, getting to know people that you can transact with. And I think that's what would drive a fund. And that's where people find their success, is when they have good, consistent behavior over the course of time.
And it's evolving your network. It's evolving in you as an individual, or you as a husband and wife, or a couple partners, evolving into, I know that there was a lot of people started in notes, and they started out with non-performing first. Then they moved on to doing buying REOs and fixing and flipping them. And some people like the whole turnkey rental, and then they kind of came back to notes. So I guess it goes back to, you don't want to be a dead shark.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good expression to keep in mind. You got to keep moving. Yeah, or else you'll get taken out.
So, and I think there are opportunities in every aspect. I think there's opportunities in performing. Um, um, If you can acquire, tell me the bad part of acquiring a bunch of performing loans that are yielding you 13%. I'm just picking a kind of low ebb of where people, because if you went out of this, people who are on this call right now, and if you went into the greater market, the population or the marketplace, and you said, look, I can get you 8 to 10% on a return on a performing loan, they jump at that. We kind of get jaded on this side of the fence. The population, if the population as a whole investing, if you said, I'm going to get you 8 to 10% on this loan, they'd be thrilled. So I think it's really how you look at your opportunities.
So you would say there's an endless supply of capital that would be interested in 8 to 10%. And obviously you'd have to build the relationships in the performing market for inventory.
You can, your meetups, your local meetups, your local real estate groups, things of that nature, they have a different perspective on it. I was at a REIA up in the South Bay, which is like Redondo Beach area.
Okay.
And there were people who were selling performing loans at par, and people were buying them because they were yielding 10 and 11%.
Yeah. And they're fixed, I assume, right? And they still vet the bar, right, to make sure that they have enough income to.
Of course, yeah. No, look, nothing all of that stays in place. But I think there are different ways you can look at everything. If you buy the asset and, just there's lots of different ways to look at and create income for yourself and create value.
Yeah.
It's not just, sitting in one small niche. Now, some people just like become really good in one niche and they just like kill it because this is what they do. They're known at that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but you can evolve and move into other areas.
What do you think when you're asked about, and I get asked this question a lot, what space should they be in within the note space? Should they do CFDs first, seconds? What's going to fizzle out first? Where the price is going to get hiked the most? And I almost think that you should just go with what you're comfortable with, and there'll always be inventory. There are always going to be opportunities if you immerse yourself into that space. What's your thought on that?
Years ago, I had a conversation with Eddie Speed, and I asked a similar question, and he said, "I've been doing this since the '80s." He says, "and I'm still doing it," and that told me everything I needed to know. Here is a sage, wise gentleman, for lack of a better term, an elder statesman of the industry who has seen more than I've seen, and he's been doing this since the '80s. So I think there's always opportunities. I think that I think that you can stay in your lane and be very successful. To your point earlier, you mentioned how you're very comfortable, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that you have to find your comfort zone. Contract for deeds is a very nice way for somebody to get into the market, kind of in a lower dollar amount. And if you kind of trip a little bit, it's not as you might get a scrape, but you're not going to get bloodied. And then other people, want to dive into the deep end and do a cannonball. It's about what your risk tolerance is and what you're comfortable with. But I see value in all scales.
I did more of a belly flop, and I went in with capital and full time. I just did this full time. I knew it, and it was after, and Bob Repass just joined in with us, and it's after I took a 3-day note school event with Joe Varnador, and in my area in Virginia, and it was just, I was hooked from that point. But the first, I realized the first space wasn't for me. It just I didn't want to I didn't want to be that close to the property, and so so I just fell with the junior lien space. But and Bob says hi to us, by the way. Hey, Bob. Yeah, so we already talked about Note Expo, sir. So we're both very excited, and we both think it's just a top notch expo. We've already expressed as much today. But yeah, so I think that's where I know training gets a bad rap, and you always see it. You always hear people talking about gurus and this and that, but there a lot of people need training. I needed it to get off the ground, and maybe some people are perpetual students and they never get out of studenthood. That can be a challenge, but I think for anyone just coming in, there's so many nuances and complexities with this space that you just need all the help that you can get, in my opinion.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's value in knowledge, and how you get that knowledge. Sometimes it's force-fed, sometimes it's piecemeal, sometimes there are a variety of ways in which you get it. But I can tell you that if you don't have it, you're going to be in a deficit position. And look, Note School has been doing it for a long time. There's a reason why there is that opportunity out there, and they do an excellent job. you can pick it up in knowledge, and you're not going to get all your knowledge in one place. And I don't think anybody would say that. You just have to figure out what your foundation is, and then you build off of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are willing to share, and there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes you find the oddest important piece of information in the strangest manner. Now, people will ask me, well, if you're going to tell me 3 things, what are those 3 things that I should do? Always record your assignments. That's the first and foremost thing to me. It's always record your assignments. Make sure that you find a servicer that you can work with. Whether they're just servicing only or your loss mitigation, but find somebody that you can create that rapport with, because those are going to be critical. Because sometimes they make mistakes too, but you have to be able, when that happens, you have to then be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I think we have a problem here. And that happened to me on a loan this week. So I think, record your assignments, have a relationship with your servicer and or vendors. And number 3, never feel that you've learned it all, because you haven't. We're always learning. We're always finding out something new. There's things that are constantly changing. Don't cut yourself off from further opportunity of learning.
No, that's great, Joel. I'm just thinking of how I pretty much update my due diligence template every time I run a pull through it. And also too, I think I use a few servicers, but with Landhome, I think of Joe LaBruna as I think of my relationship with Joe LaBruna more than I think of my relationship with Landhome, if that makes sense.
Of course. No, I remember when he came on board, and knowledgeable, smart, personable. I mean, he's just a good guy.
Yeah.
So if he's listening to us, I say hello. But you're right. Sometimes certain people become the face, and he has certainly become the face there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're out of time, Joel, and thank you for this wonderful hour. I got so much out of it. I'm sure folks did too. If you wouldn't mind, just put in the comments section how people can connect with you and your company for collateral review services, or if they want to find out how they can engage with you, if they have notes they want to sell, if they have notes they want to pick up, especially. Bob has a question for you. Bob Repass has a question. What do you think of Bruce's new album, Western Stars?
Bob and I commiserate. I love Western Stars. My favorite song is Tucson Train. And that's not, both my kids went to school there. I think it's a really beautiful melodic song. I think it's a great album. Good question. Best question of the hour.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, no doubt. Yeah, my has the Jersey Boy. Jersey Boy is ventured off from the farm on that one, but yeah, I kind of like it too. I'm a country music guy, so I kind of like it.
Well, it's a lot of influence of the old Glenn Campbell and Jimmy Webb, kind of like that 70s kind of sound, and it was, truly very enjoyable to listen to.
Well, there you have it, guys. You heard it here from Joel first. So on Western Stars. All right. Until next time, thank you for joining, everyone, and be safe and God bless and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Martin.
Yep.